Hi everyone, congratulations on you, and now we'll start the last section, object detection in Jetson Nano. We'll cover fundamentals of SSD, that is a single shot detector, and actually we talk about it in section 2. SSD is a kind of object detection framework. It's just the method is different from mask RCNM. In order to implement it in Jetson Nano, we'll need to learn Linux command line basics since the Jetson Nano run on the Linux operating system, and finally talk about the example in the Jetson Nano. So, for the fundamentals of SSD, the SSD structures are composed of a backbone model and a SSD head. So for the backbone model, it's the convolutional neural network. So you will see that this part and it composed of a convolutional layer, pooling layer, convolutional layer, and so on. So actually, it's nearly the same with what we talk about in section 1. The new things for the SSD is it involves this SSD here. It's in the end, like shown in this figure. So how the SSD head works? This figure tells us how does the SSD work. So you have the grid cells in here. A lot of the grid cells, you use the grid cells to predict where the object is and the class of it. And you have a lot of the default bounding box. In this figure, the default bounding box is the green bounding box. And you also have the ground truth bounding box is the blue one. So you will use your default bounding box to match with the ground truth bounding box and find the highest IOU value between those two by this way to detect the object. And in this figure, we'll find out the number 1 default bounding box has the highest highest IOU value with the ground truth. So we choose the number 1 as our final prediction bounding box. And also, to detect the different shapes and size of object, we use the multi-scale feature maps and aspect ratio. So in this figure, you will see that the different layers will give us predictions. These layers will detect different shapes and size of the object. So it's easy to see that SSD find all objects within an image in one pass through the additional convolutional layer. Hence, it's called single shot. And SSD is designed for object detection in real time. For the mask RCNN, so it's more time consuming and runs for a long time. But for the SSD, is can do it in the real time. So in order to implement it in Jetson Nano, we need to know the Linux command line basics. So Linux command line is a text interface to your computer. It can let us understand more underlying logic of the computer. And the command can finish tasks like changing directories by typing cd. It's like in here, you type the cd and the directories you want to go. And listing the contents by typing ls. And if you are in the current directory, you type ls, it will show all of the folders in this current SSD folder. If you type mv, you will do the jobs like moving files, move these files to another location, and so on. And the examples is amoeba detection, and for the data set is the exact same with the mask RCNN, and all of the amoeba images are taken in our lab and put all of this data set into the SSD mobile net and let it training and get the trained model, and use the trained model to run the inference. You will get this image, and it will tell you the location and the number of the amoeba. Finally, you can use this thing to do more jobs, like predict the number in one water drop. It's the same with mask RCM. And the SSD model will tell you the number and the location of the amoeba in one water drop. For the first water drop, this contains one amoeba, and here is the locations. And for the second one, it have the two amoeba, and here is the location. Okay, let's start to explore Jetson Nano more.